It's a beautiful morning here in South Florida. Customs is cleared, flight plan filed, equipment on board. Let's head out over the ocean to the Bahamas. Hey everyone, Clay from Clayaviation.com. We started this journey in Augusta, Georgia, and have made our way down here to the coast of southern Florida. On each episode, we've explored various navigation techniques, aviation concepts, and learned a lot about our airplane. Now we're going to put it all together and head out over the ocean. We're at the Palm Beach International Airport and have just gone through and checked off everything we need to fly, from the right documents to our flotation devices. Our plan today is to take off and fly south along the coast as we climb to altitude before heading out over the water to the island of Bimini. In the simulator, it's easy to predict an uneventful flight out over the water, and what's a sim session without throwing some challenging curveballs into the mix? So once we get in the air, we'll look at setting up some scenarios with random failures. We've just finished our run-up and we're almost ready to take off. But to add layer upon layer of redundancy, let's get our route plugged in and set up in several different places using the different navigation techniques we've explored along the way. First of all is pilotage and dead reckoning. Once we're out over the water, we're not going to be able to see very much down below us other than water, so checkpoints aren't going to be a possibility. However, we can use dead reckoning. So once we hit the FLL VOR, we plan on turning to a heading of 128. If everything else fails, that's our dead reckoning. That's 121 magnetic with 7 degrees west variation. So that's 128. We currently have light winds. The next thing, let's set up our VOR. So we're going to the Fort Lauderdale VOR, which is FLL. And if we zoom in here, I'm going to use our Nav2 today to navigate with our VOR because I want to use Nav1. I want to keep that for our GPS data. So over here in Nav2, which is this region, we're going to type in 114.4. So if we find these click regions, in the standby is 114. There's the small knob to get to 4 and click that into the active. We see this needle come alive, which is good. That means that we're picking up that VOR from over here. The next thing is our GPS. So let's go ahead and set up our route in the GPS. Now, we've already got PBI highlighted. Push cursor is how you kind of toggle back and forth from that. So once it's highlighted, since that's what we're starting, let's use big knob to get down, and then turning the small knob is going to let us start to just go type stuff in. So FLL is what we're typing in because that is a waypoint. That is our VOR. We're not actually going to an airport for this waypoint. Let's get up to L. And I went too far. And big knob over, one more L. FLL, US Southeast, Fort Lauderdale, click enter. Okay, it's got duplicate waypoints, so are we going to the VOR in US Southeast or the Italy? Let's go US Southeast. Italy would be fun though, right? Enter twice to accept that. Now we have FLL, and we'll go ahead and start turning our small knob one more time. And this isn't a K airport, the Bahamas is an M airport. So big knob over, we'll go backwards to get to the Y, MYBS. MY. B. One more. Let's get up to the S. S. South Bimini. Good to go. Enter and accept. Very good. Now we've got that set up in our GPS. Let's see what our message is telling us. Set course to 007. We're inside airspace. Nav out of data, which is out of date rather, which is normal for the simulator. Let's go ahead and set up our iPad. So over on our iPad, all we need to do is type in our route, KPBI FLL MYBS. Let's hit search. It's going to search our route. There's our route. If you'll notice, it says map expired at the bottom, and that is because if we click flight plan up here, and the little suitcase icon has an exclamation point, that tells us we need to pack for the trip. So it's going to download all this weather, fuel prices, NOTAMs, all kinds of good stuff for this trip. So let's just click pack. and that's now going to download all that good stuff. So we'll wait for that to download for a few minutes. This is obviously something we would do on the ground. I'm on the ground, we're flying the simulator. So that's good to go ahead and get set up ahead of time, so when you get in the airplane, you're ready and packed for the trip. But to get all of these set up at once, here we are. All right, time to get going. And we're off. We've got the ocean ahead. We'll go ahead and turn our autopilot on here. Let's pull up our GPS, see how we're looking on our course here. Here's the map. Probably go ahead and turn on course. Let's go ahead and select our heading mode. On our autopilot and altitude arm. We've got 5,500 set for the altitude today. Beautiful sunrise. We can see looking at the GPS screen that we're going to be a little bit left of course, so we can probably bring a turn on in and intercept that line just a bit. Something else we can do is head on down to our nav2 here, as we have our VOR now plugged in. Now we're going to want to have a 2 indication on our little flag as we are heading to the station. And let's get that needle centered up. So that's going to show us what radial we're on right now. You can also go ahead and switch this over to our GPS mode. You can see the needle moves. Now that's no longer taking 114.4, which was our VOR, which is in COM1. We're now taking our GPS data. So you can see that we are to the left of course. So we can fly over and just intercept that. If we look at the map and know which VOR radial that we're flying on, we can go ahead and tune that in too, but in this case, assuming we don't know that, let's go ahead and just get our GPS lined up, and then we'll match our VOR to that precisely once we get going. As our needle is swinging in on our GPS data here, we can go ahead and anticipate that and try to turn and intercept it. Or if you recall from our autopilot session, we can actually just push the nav key here, and now it's going to follow nav guidance coming out of nav 1. So we can kind of watch it intercept that and track the nav for us. So it sets up its intercept angle, and once that needle's in line, it's going to turn us and keep us right on this magenta line. That beep means we're 1,000 feet away from our altitude. Now that our GPS course has come in nicely, we can go ahead and twist our OBS needle a little bit on nav2, which is following our VOR. Go ahead and get that in line too. So we're now following both of those navigational guidance systems. We're coming up on our altitude here, so even though our autopilot is going to level us off at 5,500, we need to watch and verify and make sure that that system is working appropriately. And if it did not, we would react accordingly. So it doesn't mean we just get to sit back and take a nap while the autopilot flies by any means. We're now level 5,500. Our RPMs will pick up a little bit, so we'll pull back the power to our preset 2,500 RPMs to compensate from that. We'll go ahead and lean that mixture out just a little bit here until we see a slight rise in our RPMs. And looking for a little bit of a drop, and once we get that, we'll go a little bit richer. Landing light off. Trim is set with our autopilot. That's cruise check complete. Now, it might go without saying, but the reason that we're climbing to altitude over the land here along the coast is because we want to go ahead and be at altitude when we head out over the water. Obviously, the biggest concern that we have as far as going out over the water is losing our engine. If we did, we would have to ditch it in the water unless we're gliding distance from land. So if we can go ahead and be as high as we can, if we were to lose that engine as we go out over the water, hopefully we'd be able to turn back and land. Now, today's topic during this flight is going to be failures. And we still have about 10 minutes to travel before we turn out over the ocean. But I want to take a moment and just observe some of the systems that we have running right now and what's talking to what and what we have going. So let's zoom in a bit and take a look at our GPS. First of all, we've got our GPS with our flight plan plugged in. We have FLL VOR followed by MYBS, which is our South Bimini Airport. So we've got our flight plan and our GPS, and currently with this GPS switch selected here at the top, that means that our nav1 is talking to our GPS. So that is currently what nav1's talking to. We've got our nav2 1.114.4, that is the FLL VOR, and nav2 is this CDI. So that is what's talking to that. So we've got GPS data in nav1, VOR data in nav2. As a triple redundancy, I've also got my iPad plugged in, and that's also showing us our route from PBI to FLL and over to MYBS. Now it is our autopilot here that is talking to our nav1. So with our nav guidance activated in our autopilot, nav1 is the system that's connected to and talking to. So there's no way to have this autopilot start talking to our VOR out of nav2, even though the same basic course is basically being followed. Whatever's in our nav1 is what's going to be followed. Now, if we wanted to talk to the VOR, we've got 114.4 plugged into our COM1, so we could always now flip over to nav in the button. At that point, the VOR data is now being shown on nav1, and our autopilot will be talking to the VOR if we make any changes to that. I've also entered down in our DME that we talked about from episode 2. I've also got our 114.4 plugged into the DME. So that's showing us that we have 9 minutes to travel. We're traveling 121 knots over the ground in relation to the station, and it's showing we're 18 miles away. Well, let's take a look at our GPS and see if that's consistent with what it's saying. Yeah, look at that. About 9 minutes to go. Ground speed about 121. Look at that. So the point is that we've got several different systems talking to each other. Because as we start to get into failures, if something goes out, it'd be really nice to have something else that's guiding us. If everything else goes out, we've got a heading to fly. And ultimately, we've got a heading on paper, but once we get established in navigation over the ocean, we're going to take a look at exactly what heading we're flying. And we're going to hold that if everything else fails. But, you know, we've got our iPad right now, which is the beautiful thing about an iPad is if all the electrical system on the airplane fails, the iPad is independent of that. So as many independent redundancies as we can have is going to help us out. We're getting close. I can smell the ocean. I'm ready. Are you ready? We're about a minute out now from turning out over the ocean, but there's one more important thing we need to verify before heading out over the water, and it's something I need from you, my co-pilot on this journey. Maybe you already have this checklist out and ready, but it's the subscribe checklist. Hit the like button on this video and let me know you're watching. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell too. Stay up to date on all these videos. And leave a comment if you feel so inclined. Subscribe checklist complete. Now let's get some ocean underneath us. So now that we're established out over the water, let's just take a look at a couple things and see how we're configured. We've still got our GPS guiding us, taking us to MYBS, South Bimini Airport. Now we've only got about a little under 25 minutes of cruise before we get there. Now we're obviously in the simulator, and this would be real easy for us to sit back and let this thing take us 25 minutes and we're there, right? But what's the fun in that? So we're going to set up some failures. And in order to do that, we need to go up to our flight configuration, click the little airplane at the top. That's going to open up our flight configuration. If we take the airplane that we're in this case the Airfoillabs Cessna 172, click Customize, you'll see down here there's a Failures button. And we can go ahead and open up the failures. Now, there's a couple things at the bottom here to take a look at first and foremost. This Fix All Systems button is a great place to start. If you have any settings in there that you have previously failed or have set to fail, that's going to go ahead and return everything to normal. This next checkbox here says Set Global Mean Time Between Failures. Clicking this is going to give you a set amount of hours in which every single instrument and system could potentially fail. So in this case, 10,000 hours comes up by default, which means that any of the given systems that you have in here could fail 1 in every 10,000 hours. So if you want to fly with this on, that means that real stuff could go wrong and happen to the airplane just at any old random time as you're flying, and that's over multiple flights. In this case, we're going to kind of make things a little bit more local to just our flight today, and we're going to set this for about a 30-minute period or so. So let's take a look through some of the different fun stuff we can cause to break. It's really got about everything in here you could possibly want to break, but I've highlighted a few of the things that I think will make this flight more interesting. So under the World category, let's look at this bird strike. If you go over here in this drop-down box, you've got several options. You can fail it, which means it'll just go ahead and fail, or you can fail it when Control F is pressed, so you can set these kind of failures up. You can actually go through and set up 3, 4, 5, however many you want, and then when you're ready, hit Control F and all that stuff fails, which might be kind of fun. You can set an altitude to fail at, a speed to set at, fail at. You can set an exact time. What we're going to do today is we're going to set a mean time until failure. And in this case, we're going to set 30 minutes, because that's about how long we've got flying. I guess we could set 25, but this gives us this little chance that maybe it won't break. So we're going to set 30 minutes. And we're going to go do that with pretty much all of these. Let's go down a little bit further and see what else we can get into. If we go into aircraft, we select electrical. Let's go ahead and drag this down a little bit. Let's go ahead and fail our electrical buses. Set mean time, 30 minutes. Let's go ahead for both. Set mean time, 30 minutes. What else are we going to play with today? Let's go ahead and get a generator, which in this case should be our alternator. Set mean time, 30 minutes. What else? How about some autopilot action? If we go down a little bit further, we get to our autopilot, and let's go ahead and just click out of that. Let's go ahead and set our autopilot computer to potentially fail in a 30-minute interval. So what this is saying with a mean time is that over this 30-minute course, it's likely to fail. It's likely to fail every average of 30 minutes, which autopilot runaway, man, we could really get nasty with some of that stuff. We're going to keep it kind of basic for today. It's got controls on here if we wanted to fail any of the pitch control. I mean, if that would simulate our surfaces actually kind of failing on us, the cables actually breaking, we could do some of that too. Let's see. Actually, let's see if we can set the flaps, because that might be kind of fun if we're coming down and didn't have flaps, wouldn't it? Well, I don't know if fun's the right word, but hey, let's see what we can do. Set mean time on the flaps. Let's set 30 minutes. And that's good. We don't have landing gear issues to worry about. If we open our instruments here, let's see if we can get, let's see, the sensors. How about a vacuum pump? Set mean time, 30 minutes. Pitot tube. Set mean time, 30 minutes. How about static? Set mean time, 30 minutes. We are going to good and break this airplane on this flight, is what it's kind of looking like here, isn't it? What else can we do? Primary. Oh, here we go. Airspeed. Let's set some of this stuff. 30. Artificial horizon. Time 30. Altimeter. Let's go ahead and get all these primary instruments here potentially going out on us. Turn indicator. Heading indicator. And yeah, vertical speed. Why not? Anytime. 30 minutes. Okay. It's got co-pilot stuff on there. Obviously, a lot of this is if you had other, a different airplane. So for navigation, we've got our COM2, or a NavCom2. Let's go ahead and make that one volatile as well. Let's see, what else are we working with? Also, we could go ahead and fail GPS 1, set mean time 30, but I know that if we go down a little bit, I believe there's another, let's see, 430. Yeah, take a look at this. Set, let's see, GPS receiver in 430, number 1. Mean time 30. And let's see. So the engine, right? So that's the big one is like, are we going to have our engine fail on us? But where did I see? Yeah, if you go down, I don't know why they got it twice. If you go down to this engines right here, you get failures. And we could fail magnetos. We could have an engine fire. But let's do this, because I want to make it there, right? Like, I don't want this thing just to go down over the ocean. So I'll tell you what, let's do this. Let's set a mean time for an engine failure, but let's set it for 60 minutes. So by my math, that's about a 50-50 shot that our engine's going to fail. It's not a guarantee. Let's see how that works. And is there anything else we need? We could go through and do all kinds of stuff here. I think this is good. Let's click done on this. And let's apply our changes. And let's have a little fun with it. Right? So, look, you're flying this like I'm flying this. I don't have this planned out. I don't know what's going to fail. And right now, all we can do is watch our instruments and fly this airplane. If we look at our glide advisor on our iPad, we can see that if we were to lose our engine right now, we should be able to turn back and make it to not only land, but to the airport behind us, which is really nice. But that is closing in quickly on us not being able to make it. So pretty soon we're going to reach the point of no return, in which case we're just going to keep on heading there. And if the engine were to fail, we're going to have to put it down in the ocean. I don't know where you are and you're flying. Maybe you're a sim pilot, maybe you're a real world pilot, maybe you're just curious. But I know when I started to learn to fly, I had gone out to PDK Airport in Atlanta and watched the airplanes. I saw an instructor soloing a student, and I was fascinated by the whole process. And I just realized through that experience how attainable it is to go and get my pilot's license. So I started working on it. And if you're curious and you've been wondering if you can do it, go out there and do it. Go to your nearest airport. I guarantee you that there's an airport near where you live that has a flight school that will take you on a discovery flight and make a great gift, and you don't have to enroll or commit to anything to go take a discovery flight. Just get out there, and all you're doing is taking a ride. At the worst case scenario, it's a pleasure flight. You get to enjoy some scenery, and in the best case scenario, you're going to get hit. You're going to get hooked like the rest of us that have learned to fly. And the aviation bug bites hard, guys. And it's quite the addiction, but it's such a joy to do. So I would encourage you to get out there, take a discovery flight, and see what it's all about. If you're interested in learning to fly, I highly encourage you to head over to m0a.com and check out Jason Shepard there and his online ground school. He does a fantastic job. I chatted with Jason leading up to this flight to get a little bit of guidance from him and some insight, as he has flown plenty of times over to the Bahamas with some students. He's based out of Ocala, Florida. So Jason, thanks so much for your help and your insight. And if you're interested in some online ground school, check out m0a.com. So since we know that a failure's coming, we're watching everything like a hawk. And that's the same intensity we should monitor our systems with any time that we're flying for something to go wrong. And you know, even in the sim, without failure set, sometimes things don't go right. Oh, look, there goes our GPS. We just lost our GPS guidance. Okay, so now we need to think through, what does that mean for us? All right, so the GPS has gone out, and the GPS was talking to nav1, right? And our autopilot is set to nav mode, which is talking to nav1. So where is this data coming from? I don't know. We need to switch this out though. So do we have a way to have our autopilot talk to nav1? I don't think so, because we've got our GPS, either our GPS or our nav1 radios all tied into our GPS screen here. Now we're staying on course, but we don't know if this signal is reliable at this point. So the best thing we need to do at this point is go from nav mode and flip over to heading mode. And now nothing really happened, which is what should happen, because we've got our heading bug set to the heading we were currently flying. So in this case, we've had our first failure. It was a GPS. And now we are flying by heading alone. Now we're still we've got a nav flag on our VOR here, 114.4. So, you know, I don't know if we lost our VOR. I don't know if that's failed. I don't know if we can't pick up the signal. But it's pretty quickly gotten to the point here. Maybe you noticed this before I did, but that our VOR is not giving us a reliable signal. So we no longer have GPS or VOR. So what does that make us down to? Well, we're down to dead reckoning, first and foremost, which is just simply the heading we were flying. Let's hope that staying on that heading takes us there. And we also have our iPad. So we can take a look at our iPad and see that we're actually right on course. So as long as we got battery power in our iPad, we're going to be good to go here for a little while. So we'll keep heading this course, and we'll try to make sure that that matches up to our iPad course, and see how we're looking. Look for some land. Let's look at a few things here. Our engine instruments are looking good. Temperature and pressure's in the green. We've got a slight positive charge on the ammeter, which is good. Vacuum's in the green. We've got fuel flow. Our fuel tanks are still showing pretty full here. Airspeed is showing what we would expect. And all of our other instruments are reading correctly. 5,500 feet. Vertical speed is level. We still have 120 on the heading. Autopilot's flying us. Nothing on the turn coordinator. Some of these things have a flag. The turn coordinator on that right wing has a flag. If that went out, that would pop up there, show us that it's out. Right now, we're flying without a GPS, and we're flying without VOR. Those systems have both failed on us. So we are now just flying with our autopilot, giving us our heading, with our iPad now, really our, I guess you'd call that our primary navigation. I can see some land in the distance. Check it out. That's the Bahamas, guys. That's where we're going. To celebrate seeing the land in the distance, I want to tell you about one little feature of this Airfoillabs Cessna 172. Let's go down and take a look at this COM 3 button. You ever wonder what happened if you turn on COM 3? Check it out. Aloha. Alright, I know we're not going to Hawaii, but that's kind of fun, right? It's kind of island themed. So that's COM 3 for you. That's our little hula girl in COM 3. Maybe you didn't know that. Alright, let's get serious. Let's get back to it. Let's see what we've got. If our autopilot fails and I've got to hand fly this thing, that's really going to add a new layer into the mix, isn't it? I'm very used to this autopilot. I love the autopilot. It's nice to be able to let it fly for you, and you can monitor the systems closely. But as with anything else, as our workload increases, our stress level increases, it's easy to get task saturated. Even just holding a heading in a wings level on the airplane is a task, and that's just one layer of task that can get you task saturated as things start to mount up. And you know, with the autopilot on, you can look at your systems and play with knobs and figure out what's going on. But when you're constantly now having to, if the autopilot fails and we're constantly having to look at our heading and our altitude, look, I'm not saying that's impossible to do. I'm just saying that's one more thing to do when you're trying to troubleshoot a problem. So use that autopilot to your advantage. That goes for real world flying too. If you've got a scenario and you can pop that autopilot on and let the airplane hold its heading and altitude for a bit while you troubleshoot something, hey, use that to your advantage. You might be wondering, well, what would it look like if we had an alternator failure? I've got a video out on the electrical system that kind of explains the electrical system, and we kind of talk through the whole thing. But take a look at this ammeter, and let's look at what would happen if I actually turn the alternator off right now. Now we got a discharge. Okay, so if the alternator were to go offline, that's what would happen. That's what we're looking for. And obviously, if the ammeter were to go offline and give us a discharge, then the airplane's running on the battery. And at that point, we're only going to have as much life in this airplane as the battery will give us juice. So we're looking at, you know, I don't know, maybe 10, 15, 20, 30, who knows, minutes of power before we lose everything electrical. So that's what's really nice to know is when we're troubleshooting, what are we going to lose when something goes out? And that's why the sim is a great place to practice all this. That way you can go ahead and you can set up a scenario and fail something yourself. That's where that Control F failure might really come in handy, is if you want to go ahead and fail a group of instruments and then practice how it's going to happen if it happens. You go through some checklists and you can figure it out. This is fun, isn't it? You think we're going to make it? How long do we have? Look, if you use on the iPad screen, you can put 2 fingers up and actually get a ruler up and measure and see how far out we are. So right now I'm showing that we are 19, right at about 20 miles out, maybe 19 miles out. And the iPad's really great. This is why we have the airplane information configured in there, because it's showing that that's about 9 minutes and 1 gallon of fuel is what that's expecting to burn, based on the parameters that we input for cruising flight. It's expecting us to go 9 minutes. So if we can make it another 9 minutes without a catastrophic failure, we're going to be drinking something with an umbrella in it, I do believe. Now another thought is, when do we start our descent? In one of our early episodes, we went over some basic descent planning and talked about, you know, if we're going 2 miles a minute, going 120 roughly, you know, that we're using that along with how far we have to descend, which in this case is 5,500, and if we're going 500 feet a minute, that means that we've got 11 minutes. So, you know, how far out basically do we need to start our descent to get down in time? But something to think about in this case is, if as soon as we start our descent, we're losing altitude, and if we were to lose our engine, altitude is the only thing that we have to trade for distance. So in this case, you know, look, in the real world, I guess you could technically lose your engine anytime. You know, I think you could probably go ahead and start a descent prior to getting to the airport. In this case, we might as well stay as high as we can, keep all the altitude we can until we get over the island. And at that point, when we're within gliding distance of the island, we can start a descent and go ahead and power down and glide down to the runway. There's no use in wasting that altitude while we're up here. As we're approaching the islands here, I want to take a moment to thank you, the viewer, the subscriber. Thank you guys so much for watching, for being a part of this. Y'all are awesome. Your comments that you've left me on the xplane.org forum, on these videos, it's just been really encouraging. It's been great to chat with you guys and have some conversation about flying. I'm very open to any ideas you might have on any future flights that we could take together. I do plan on doing more of these bucket list flights, and we can fly to some really cool places and explore some really cool things and learn together. I'd also like to thank xplane.org and Nicholas. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to make these videos and have them up on the xplane.org site. Go to xplane.org, check out some new scenery. There's all kinds of add-ons you can play around with for X-Plane. It's really cool. There's some weather plugins, there's airport plugins, nighttime plugins. You can search by the country that you're flying in and find some scenery. You can download new airplanes. Really, really cool website. If you're not already a part of xplane.org, definitely get on xplane.org. Okay, looking out, we can actually see the runway now. It's kind of over on this part of the island that's straight off our nose. So that's good when we got a visual of the runway in sight. All right, let's go ahead and set up a descent here. If we go over to our autopilot, we can go ahead and set a vertical speed here of about 500 feet per minute. We can probably actually make it a little bit more aggressive than that. 700 feet per minute. Let's not let our RPMs creep up. We'll go ahead and pull those back some. If we were to lose our engine right now, I believe we'd be able to make the runway just fine. So we're in a pretty good place here. Looking at the information, we should have a 9 and 2/7 runway up here, so we'll kind of fly over a bit. Well, we're not on the ground yet, guys, but we didn't lose all that much. I think we're in good shape. We can go ahead and get a descent check-in, get our mixture rich, get our landing light on. Seats and belts are secure. Fuel selector is both. D. Mixture is rich. Engine instruments still look good. Our avionics we have lost. We cannot set those. Nav GPS switch doesn't matter. Aircraft lights we have our landing on. And pitot heat we will keep off. Descent check complete. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the autopilot there and bring this on down myself now. We're very high. We're still at 4,000 feet, of course. As was expected. We didn't want to descend too soon. So we're just going to kind of swing wide here and shoot for entering a midfield left downwind for runway 27. Kind of fly over the airport. And take a look out. See how things are looking. When we roll out of the arrival into 27, we should be over at the area with the buildings and see customs. I don't want to get too far out here, especially knowing you could lose an engine at any time. If we really wanted to stay close to the airport, we could just do some spirals down to it if we wanted to. In this case, I'm liking where we are. Let's go ahead and turn back. We should be at pattern altitude in maybe about 3 minutes or so. Got a nice little descent rate coming on down. Are there any systems I'm not seeing that y'all have seen? Let me know if so. I might have missed something. You know, something I just thought about is we had our flaps set to potentially fail. I wonder if our flaps are going to come down for us when we're ready for them. Just have to wait and see, huh? Got 1,000 feet to go for pattern altitude. Got the runway in sight. We might have gotten a little far out there. Glide advisor on ForeFlight's showing that we are just barely making the runway right now if we were to lose it. So we might want to come in and fly a nice tight pattern. Go ahead and slow us up though. We're just going to have to see if these flaps work. We just don't know. Right here at about pattern altitude, and we'll go ahead and power up a little bit. Not descend too far, we'll slow down some. Keep this nice and tight. Beam the numbers. Go ahead and pull our power out here. Under 110, we can throw a notch of flaps. Let's see if they work. We've got flaps. Very nice. Let's keep slowing up here. 1,600 RPMs. 500 foot per minute descent rate looks really nice. Let's go ahead and slow back to the point where we've got 85 knots. Once we're in this white arc here. Go ahead and put another notch of flaps in. Doing good. Let's not let our speed drop down too much. We'll go ahead and turn our base leg here. Keeping in mind, anything could fail on us at any time now. Any of these instruments could go out. We could have a blockage of the pitot tube, the static port. Any of these systems could still fail. Alright, let's go ahead and turn on in. Alright, we're on final. Everything's looking good. We've still got all the basics. We got an engine. Reduce our power. We've made the runway. So here we are in the Bahamas at the South Bimini Airport. We're going to get through customs, get our luggage, grab a cab, get into town, and see what we can get into. Thanks so much for flying. Thanks for following the series and heading out to the Bahamas here with me. It's not over yet. We've got more bucket list flights to do. And next week we're going to do an encore of a little bit of island hopping and exploring some fun parts of the Bahamas. So it's not over yet, guys. Stay tuned. I hope there's someone who can fix a GPS out here. Until then, enjoy your flying.